Hello, Codi Cast listeners. Welcome back. Now, for today's episode, we have a very special guest and one that I have just met for the first time in real life because we actually initially connected during ISO. So it was only virtually, but he's sitting right in front of me, which is very exciting. So he is the head of marketing and brand strategy at ANZ, so one of the biggest banks in Australia. So welcome to the show, Kjetil Undhjem.
Perfect.
Close.
Well, very well done.
AKA Steve.
Excellent. That was perfect.
You've got to tell people, I was actually just off camera, we were just laughing about this. So how did you get the nickname Steve? Please tell our audience.
Well, I gave up trying to get a coffee being called using the name Kjetil. So I had to pronounce and spell my name so many times. So it just wasn't worthwhile. So I want my coffee today, not tomorrow. So Steve seemed like a good option.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to do my best to pronounce your name correctly because I don't want to call you Steve or Shaq, as it's a story for another day. But thank you so much for making the time to have a chat today. You've had a very interesting career history. So prior to ANZ, you were at Mondelez, so the owners of Cadbury. Are you sick of chocolate?
Never.
Good answer. So you've obviously gone from FMCG to financial services. So what was that leap like? And why did you actually decide to make that move?
Well, I was actually working out of Zurich in Switzerland for a Mondelez, selling and marketing chocolate in Europe. And my wife and daughter were supposed to join me, but my daughter had a change of heart and said, "Daddy, I want to stay in Melbourne." Oh. And so I was stuck in Zurich. My wife said, "Well, my daughter's going to stay in Melbourne. I'm going to stay." And guess what? Then the dog stays. And maybe, the dog was the driving reason for actually going back more than the family. But, I just found, I commuted for a year and a half. Every 3 months, I went back and it just didn't work. So I said, well, I want to go back. And at the time, I've been working with chocolate for 10 years across 25 different markets. And I thought, I just want to do something different. Something really, really different. Something I don't know nothing about. So if somebody's stupid enough to hire me into something I don't know anything about, then that be it. And luckily, actually, ANZ was looking for kind of something different, not a traditional kind of bank marketer, but somebody who had a much more stronger commercial marketing background, which you, in FMCG, marketers own the P&L. So I was kind of trying to come in and actually drive an agenda of actually make marketing more accountable in terms of actually the business outcomes.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I remember when we first had a chat, I was quite amazed that a bank like ANZ, which, look, to be honest with you, I perceive them to be stuffy, boring, traditional banking, would want to go for someone with such a diverse background. So I think good on them. And it actually says a lot about the way they want to communicate with their customers. And I love the ANZ banking marketing. I'm not going to lie. My team probably sick of hearing me talk about Shane Elliott on LinkedIn. But, I think that what you're doing and what your plans and what you have planned is going to be super exciting. So hopefully we can touch a little bit on that today. Before we leave the topic of chocolate, I just wanted to know the most interesting thing you learnt about chocolate. Because I imagine working 10 years, there are probably some unpredictable things.
God. Threw me off there a little bit. Actually, I really got into the production side of it. Found that really interesting in terms of actually how do you call it, the perfect chocolate in terms of not just taste but also texture. And how they studied how chocolate melts on your tongue, I just found strikingly fascinating because that's not something you naturally just learn or pick up. So I found the science of chocolate actually probably as interesting as the marketing of chocolate.
Oh, that's actually very interesting. Look, we could do a whole separate topic podcast about chocolate, but we should probably move into what you're doing now. So you're obviously working at ANZ and you started in January 2020. So literally just before the shit hit the fan and everything went into lockdown in Melbourne. So how did you find that? Because a lot of obviously when you start a new job, you want to be around your team, you want to be hearing the buzz of the organisation, feeling the energy, but all of a sudden you're 3 months in and then you're sitting at home with your wife and your dog and no one else around.
Mm-hmm. I think, at the time it's a bit of a, I wouldn't say panic, more like a shock. But in retrospect, I actually come to actually think it was a benefit. Because it was kind of like, I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. So what I could do, I could really focus on the issue at hand, which was the pandemic that hit. So I didn't have any distractions in terms of, other things I knew the bank had to do, because I didn't know what the bank was doing anyway. So yeah, in hindsight, it was actually probably a good thing. And to your point, I could then hone in terms of what can we do to help, within marketing to actually address, what's the issues of the pandemic, but then also actually engage with my team. So I organized, in that first instance where we had 1 hour within that short little zone, people to come to down to where I live, and then I would walk on the beach for 1 hour with them and have one-to-ones on the beach.
Oh, I love that.
So that was probably a better way to get to know people, because everybody just so much more relaxed, and myself included. So yeah, I'm looking back at it probably more with a positive attitude than at the time, because at the time it was very different.
Oh, that's actually, I love that long walks on the beach way of getting to know people. So that's a new meeting format. I think maybe I should try with my team.
Yeah, a lot of us still kind of keep on doing it.
Like the walking meetings.
Yeah. So next week I'm catching up with somebody and we're going to go for a walk on the beach for an hour. So.
Fantastic. So has anything else, because obviously you had a career beforehand, and so coming into corporate, like I imagine there's probably similar routines that you would have adopted or similar habits. Has anything dramatically changed since last year? So obviously you've got your walking meetings on the beach, which is great. Anything else that you feel like you've taken from last year and you're going to keep doing?
I think one thing I definitely talked about that I'm actually going to start doing again is actually being more in the office and meeting people you didn't meet last year.
Yes.
That's kind of probably the one thing. I think what I'm going to try to do, but I'm already finding it hard going back to the office, is actually the discipline we had at home in terms of being very structured, and you can control your day quite easily. I find now being back in the office, you just run into people and suddenly you're 5 minutes or 10 minutes behind your meeting, and suddenly you're 10 emails behind or 100 emails behind, and suddenly you got to catch up during the evening again. So it's kind of, what did I learn last year in terms of organizing my day that I need to kind of think through really, really consciously now that I go back to the office, and also for my team, so I don't get too distracted and just literally just walk around and be unproductive during the day and have to be productive during the evening.
It's actually a very good point. I feel like I'm exactly the same. Like I come into work it's not to socialize. I'm probably distracting the team, don't get me wrong, but I want to be there for them if they've got questions and engage with them. And so I often don't do any work during the day. So then I'll hit 5 o'clock. I'm like, okay, my day's going to start now, and I'll actually start working. So that's definitely something that's different. And like what you were saying about emails, I feel like during ISO I sent so many unnecessary emails and should have just picked up the phone. And whereas now I'm back in the office, I can just yell out and say, hey, Coco, what's this? And then she can answer. So, yeah, it's very interesting. I just started listening to a podcast talking about, I can't remember, it was an interview with a guy talking about how to get rid of emails. And he was saying that people mistake emails, like the purpose for accessibility, when it's really should be focused more around clarity. So if you can be really clear in your emails, you don't need to send as many, because otherwise you just have all these questions and it becomes like a chain of questions. So I think that was something that really changed my mindset. So I'm going to try and reduce my inbox.
I think I find so for me it's been automatic, because in ISO, all of us were multitasking. You're on Teams all the time, but not all the calls you were on were you an active participant. So you do emails at the same time.
Yes.
Now, if you get back into the office, sitting in the meeting room, you kind of, laptops down, phones off. So naturally kind of reduces the volume. So the challenge we just talked about, I'm back in the office 5 days. My team's not back in the office all days. So, they can still do emails when they're home, but, you're not. That's why that's just a catch-22 in terms of actually we're going to need to find a balance where everybody's doing the same thing.
Yes. So you need to tell everyone to come back in.
Or
stop sending emails, guys. Yeah. Fantastic. So in terms of brand and strategy, that's obviously brand strategy, marketing is your bread and butter and your topic of expertise. So we're going to focus a little bit around that today. So I think the interesting thing that I found in 2020, and I don't want to use the word pivot, but a lot of people changed the way they were communicating. They changed their marketing. You couldn't really push out just really salesy marketing messages anymore. It had to be a lot more around support and being there for your customers. So do you think, or how do you feel like the ANZ marketing and comms really changed last year?
Well, it's funny that, when I joined, literally the day I joined in January last year, we launched our new brand campaign, which is all around improving customers' financial well-being. And, we had no idea that 2 months later would be on everybody's agenda. So, from a pure marketing point of view, we were very lucky, pure luck, that, we actually launched our new brand platform on the right topic. So what we did going into that, as the pandemic hit, is kind of just leveraging that platform, which was a brand platform to start with, but then leveraging it into the products. What does it actually mean for the products? And this was highly relevant in terms of, the loan deferrals program that came in, that you could put your home loan or your business loan, you can pause it literally. But what we wanted to do is then actually go to our customers and tell them, well, what's the implications? Try to educate them on financial well-being. So that's kind of one thing we did, and very successfully. So it's more about services, to your point, in terms of how do we service these products with you as our customers. The other thing is we took down in the first few months our tone. We're known for being a bit humorous and playfully clever. We just didn't feel that tone was appropriate during especially March, April, May. But then we found out when people were tired of being tired. So actually people wanted, some sort of normality back. So we kind of back into where we used to be right now. So I think we learned a lot. We did, to your point, pivot, but we didn't have to pivot very hard in terms of actually completely changing what the brand was all about, because it just gave us a platform to really talk about financial well-being. And we have research saying that couples find it harder to talk about their sex life than their financial life. And then, so this just became, and really again, now you have to talk about it, so it helped us. We didn't say that though.
How is that not your leading tagline for a campaign? It's actually quite interesting, I think, because I remember when we chatted, obviously your background's quite different and you're one of the smaller of the big banks, and I love that you want to have a bit of fun. And I would not necessarily have thought that would be the case for one of the big banks, but I feel like it's such a great way to connect with people, because I, very much like you, I remember pushing out content during last year, and I didn't want to be too serious all the time, because like you said, people are tired of that, and it's like people are feeling sad. You don't need to keep talking about how much everything sucks. So I think sometimes it helps to actually remember just to laugh and give people a reason to smile. So it's great to hear that that's the way that you wanted to take the marketing.
And I think, it worked for us because we always been doing it. I think it'd be harder if you try to start doing it during that period of time. I think that'd be kind of, could be problematic. Yeah.
So what's some of the things that you're really excited about that's coming out that you can talk about from like a marketing brand perspective that's coming up that you've been personally working on?
So we are just launching right now our new business lending campaign, and it's starting, quite subtly, but we're going to go quite hard now in the next coming weeks. That's something I've been happy to kind of be quite integral in, and it's kind of something that's started, during COVID and on lockdown, and then that's kind of ramped up now that everybody come out. And it's kind of interesting to follow the whole process through that exercise. So you'll see a lot of great creative. I think again we just saw the offline earlier this week in terms of what's the key assets going to be, and it's it really makes me happy as to watch it, both from an ANZ point of view, but also I think from an audience point of view. I think they'll get a lot out of it. I think they'll enjoy it, and we got some good product offerings that's tied to it. So it's not just about the comms, it's actually the product that sits behind it as well that we feel very excited about. So that's, I would say, is the big thing coming now shortly. So And then we are continuously looking into our financial well-being content. We're doing a lot of test and learns. So probably things you don't really see that much because it's not, it's not on TV, it's not about line. But we keep on trying to find new channels, new audiences, and test out new content. And some of that we do, ourselves. Some we do with our agency partners. And some we do also with the partnership we have with Facebook and Google. So try to leverage, their assets as well. So I think there's a lot of things going on there that we're really very proud of, but that probably isn't visible to the broad audience.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we'll definitely have to keep an eye out for that new business lending campaign, which is very exciting. I have to say that I obviously spend far too long on LinkedIn. And during the pandemic, I loved the content that the team were putting out because I felt like it was very human. And in my head, I guess I had this perception that a big bank like ANZ would want everything to be beautifully presented, really polished, probably a full film camera setup just to produce a small video. And then I remember seeing Shane's content, like the CEO, Shane Elliott, and I was just thinking, does this guy even have a tripod? Like, what's he doing? Why is the camera quality so shaky? I'm like, can someone get him a tripod? But it was so real. And it was like just a photo of him at his desk and he was talking about what's on his desk. And I thought that's such a great way to humanize a big bank, which is otherwise, I think, a lot of people, it becomes an easy target because it doesn't have a face. And I really loved all the content that you're putting through, talking to the people and really humanizing it. So I think that's a fantastic way to really connect with the customer and the potential customers.
I think, you said the word, he is who he is. So he is very human, and he is very empathetic. And he's, on top of that, he's very passionate. He's very passionate, one about the business, but also about the customer. So, so it does become pure authenticity. So that's why I think also, to your point, it doesn't need to be polished because it actually takes away from it. And he's comfortable because that's who he is.
And I love that. And actually, interestingly, I was listening to a podcast. It was with, it was on Reid Hoffman, who's the co-founder of LinkedIn. He was introducing, I hope I get her name right, I think it's Angela Ahrens. Oh God, I probably butchered that. But she was the former VP of sales of Apple. And she was saying when she first started with the company, she wanted to just film a video to her team on the iPhone. And they said, no, we don't want that. It has to be beautiful production. We need to come in. Everything at Apple has to be perfect. And she's like, no, I'm going to film on my iPhone. And they're like, no, we're going to do it proper. And she's like, no, I'm doing it. And then she filmed on her iPhone. And then during the, when she was filming it, her daughter called. And then I think she left it in and just said, my daughter just called. I had to quickly let her know I was doing something for work. And she said she got so many responses from people, firstly because it was just shot on her iPhone, and secondly she was showing that human side. It didn't have to be so beautifully produced and so perfect. And I think that that's where a lot of us fall into the trap when we're thinking about marketing and comms. Like, everyone thinks it has to be so perfectly produced. There can't be any form of non-production in there, but yet sometimes the most raw and authentic things actually connect the best.
I think you saw that during last year, because with a lot of not just banks but other companies as well just kind of literally started to show their employees in terms of who they are, and actually when you think about it, actually your most passionate people are your own employees, and so why don't showcase them, because they're the ones actually doing the job. And they think about all the people we have in the contact center, and this is kind of one of my dreams is I really want to showcase more of our own people and be proud of the work they do, because guess what, they're very proud of what they do.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's what I think a platform like LinkedIn is really good for, like getting your team active. And my team, some of them are in this room, they're probably sick of me talking about LinkedIn, but I always encourage them to share whatever they're thinking. And I think as an employer or a manager, like, we have a responsibility to try and encourage them to have a voice and use it. So if they're passionate about women's rights or equality or whatever they're passionate about, like, to talk about it and use that platform. So I think that's really important. So moving on to a segment we like to call Trend Watch. I know we really need to work on a woohoo Trend Watch little opener. But we love talking to experts such as yourself and finding out what's happening in your space and what we should be looking out for. So you're obviously quite active in a few spaces. So, from a consumer spending or fintech perspective, what kind of cool things are you seeing in the market at the moment?
Well, like you mentioned it, fintech, it's really, really interesting to follow what they're doing. I probably follow more the user experience than I actually follow the product side of it, because the products don't really change too much. Different features too. But what we find is as we try to make people more comfortable one talking about finance, is actually exploring and be comfortable with their own finance. And we said the heartbeat of financial well-being is actually to empowering people to have a control and confidence, or they call it money matters. And actually we found out user experience is really, really important. So if it's simple, if it's easy, if it's clear, if it's intuitive, and not too much words, not too educational, and definitely not too pushy, that drives people in to actually more engaged with their finances. And then the more comfortable they get, the more active they do get. And I think a lot of the fintechs get that. And you'll see a lot in financial industries very heavy now in terms of investing in behavioral science. And that's new to me as well, because in FMCG, we didn't do much on behavioral science, but this is all about, creating habits, creating the right habits, and actually nudging you in the right direction to actually you being empowered. It's not about telling you, it's about empowering you. And I think that's where I pick up in terms of the trend watch. If I were you, skew towards behavioral science.
Oh, I love that. And then in terms of behavioural science, do you really start to look at that younger generation? Because I remember when I was actually at school, there was another bank and they got in really early with school programs with kids. And then I think that was actually pretty smart. I don't think they allow that anymore, but I'm not going to mention the bank's name. But, I think that next generation, and we just did an episode on Gen Z, and they're super switched on. Like Gen Z are honestly going to take over the world, change the world. Like they're so much more savvy because they've got so much more access to information than I'd say, that's my excuse anyway, than when I was growing up. Like I think back to when I was a child, I was looking at Encyclopedia Britannica, which is very out of date quite quickly, pretty much as soon as it got published. Whereas now they can literally absorb updates from someone from the other side of the world in a completely different country and socio-economic background. So do you feel like there's a big focus as a business on, I guess, marketing towards that next generation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the whole program we're working on is everything is, like I said, but literally digital self-service. What COVID also did is, of course, we had to shut the branches. So, just really literally had to kind of leapfrog in terms of the development we were doing in terms of actually making sure that we can make, the broad set of the population digitally active. Now, of course, the younger population tend to already be, I've actually used that generation to kind of educate their parents and their grandparents to actually become more agile on that. And again, like I said, we do a lot of test and learns in terms of financial well-being, and we kind of want to use that as our platform also in with the younger audiences. And we don't want it to be product-led. We want it actually to be behavior and habit-led. And again, institutionalized and call it the right, we call it the financial well-being principles. And they're very simple, spend less than you earn, save for a rainy day, things like that. Just educate or empower and get them to learn and understand the importance of these simple principles in terms of actually as a starting point, because it gets more complex later when you're going to start to save for a home, then buy a home, potentially buy investment property, and then start to do thinking more about retirement as well. So the principles go through all the journey, but in terms of the younger audiences, we're focusing on the simpler principles, and then the products get tagged in rather than the other way around.
That's great. And it's almost like that content style marketing. So you're not just going, here's the product. It's like, actually, this is what you should be doing. So this is the content and it's around the principles. And this is how we can actually help you spend less than you earn, which is something that I need to always work on because I love shopping. Okay, so actually speaking of things that you need to learn, we'll move on to our next segment, which is things I've learnt. So in terms of you work for two big companies now. So what's the biggest thing you learnt about marketing and brand strategy at Mondelez, and what's the biggest thing you've learnt at ANZ?
So I think, it's FMCG is a beautiful place to do brand strategy, because it's at the heart of the organization. Marketing, is the heartbeat. So I think, it just clears the core principles in terms of what's important. We talk a lot about where to play and how to win. This is, the fundamentals, but actually really we're being rigorous about it. What we did, I think, really, really well there, we were very choiceful in terms of our brand strategy. And I challenge everybody in not just the bank, but in all my jobs is when you develop a brand strategy, yeah, that's fine. Put that on a piece of paper. The second page is going to be, what are you not going to do? A lot of brand strategy still is too broad. And, strategy by definition is about choices. So if you have a strategy that's where you haven't made choices, you want to be everything for everybody, that's not a strategy, that's a dream. And I think that you learn that in FMCG because you have to be choiceful, because you got very limited resources, both in terms of money and people. And you get really, really pushed all the time on that. So kind of that's one of the things I bring with me into the banks. I'm really, really pushing my team in terms of being choiceful. And also being a big bank, we tend to have, more resources. So you can easily fall into the trap of, we don't need to make too many choices because we can do a lot of things anyway. But it's really, really good to see the narrative coming through that people actually, this audience is more important than this audience. This product is more important than this product. This channel is more important than this channel. So I find that also in FMCG, it's literally it's all about winning, It's a very competitive environment. I don't sense the same level of competitiveness in the banking industry among the big four. We're all kind of very driven, hardworking, very passionate about what we do. But it's not that kind of winning agenda that kind of drives it. It's which is probably good in the sense that it's more of we're here for the customers.
That's good.
Which is really, really good. So I just kind of want that kind of added benefit of, okay, well, what does good look like then? If you actually are here for the customers and you do well with the customers, what's the outcome of that? But that's kind of my FMCG background, which I'm struggling a bit with the culture to actually say, well, we think differently here. But I said, fine. I said I'm here to learn. So I'll learn something new and, I'll share some of the learnings. And not all of them are applicable, but, that's fine. We'll find our way and land somewhere in the middle probably.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because with the big four, it's obviously going to be super relationship based because you're bringing people on and then you hope that they'll bank with you for life. And if they have kids, they'll bank with you for life and so on and so forth. Whereas I almost feel like with FMCG, I don't know if there's that loyalty look, if you've got a very strong brand, like say a Kraft Heinz or something like that, or a Cadbury, then yes, I think you can really build that long-term relationship. But because the consumer item is so cheap, it's like, oh, there's a new tomato sauce. Yeah, I'll give that a try for $3. And so it's not as sticky, whereas a bank, it's like there's so much paperwork to move. So you want to really get them in and then it's like almost, it's not easy to keep them in, but it's like just making sure you can draw them in and keep that relationship going.
Yeah, and I think, we do naturally, of course, in banking talk more about lifetime value, to your point. And you can see that more easily. We had, when worked in Cadbury, we had this, again, dream that, as a consumer, you first have a Freddo, then you move into Marvelous Creation, then you'll have a Cadbury Dairy Milk, and then you have All Gold. It's like... So you can have lifetime value, but it's harder to build those kind of relationship because in banking, what the benefit, of course, is you sit on your customers' data, so you have literally insights.
Yes.
So of course, you can proactively help them when you see what their financial situation is at. So that's also very new to me to actually be sitting at that side of the table. Actually, I got the data. I don't have to go to Coles and Woolies and ask if I can get it. Actually, I have it. Now the question is then, what do you do with it? So it becomes really, really. Another, like I said, it's a learning exercise for me in terms of being able to actually work on, call it data analytics and insights when you actually have it, rather than actually having it out and do surveys and try to interview people.
And I think that's one of the challenges in corporates. Like I know that in my background, you can get access to so much data, especially in the digital space, but then it's finding the time to actually interpret that and then finding the time to execute something based on your findings from that data. So it's just, sometimes it's almost like information overload. So you have to be just so specific about what exactly you're looking for and then what to do with it.
It's back to, to the brand strategy point in terms of being, choiceful. And we talk a lot about it because a lot of people very quickly say that they got information or insights. Well, actually what they have is data.
Yes.
You don't even have information because it's not structured, and you sure as hell don't have insights because you haven't actually taken anything out of the information that you structured. So that's also kind of pushed back from me in terms of, we've got to be clear in terms of what we're asking. And then when we ask, we've got to be very, very choiceful in terms of how we interpret the data. And actually then, make clear strategic choices.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, unfortunately, we have reached the end. We've got one more segment left, which is quick questions, but I feel like I could just keep talking for hours. So we're going to go out for lunch after this, so at least we can keep talking at lunchtime. So just to finish off, I'm going to ask you 5 quick questions, and you just need to give a 1-word or 1-sentence answer. So I'm going to jump straight into it. So question number 1, do you see the impacts of 2020 on digital transformation and growth being quick, but do you see that it's been necessary for the digital transformation of the economy? Because I feel like it just happened so quickly, and all these people were just, I guess, putting things off and not wanting to do digital things, but all of a sudden they've had to do it. So do you think that's been a good thing, or do you think it's been a little bit of a challenge because everyone's been so rushed?
No, I think it's been a good thing. I think it's it's like ripping off the Band-Aid instead of peeling it off, and yeah, it's a bit painful, but it's actually the good thing to do. So I'm encouraging my daughter to actually make sure that she chooses the right subject at uni now, because as I said, the world is changing very quickly, and the job market will change as well. So yeah, be prepared.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, what's your biggest learning from last year that's non-business related?
I think it's not business related, but I think it's the fact that you can actually be thrown into the unknown, and you actually end up standing very easily. If you had planned for it, probably taken us 2 years to do the change. Now it happened in a day. And I think it's kind of, and I don't want to lose that. That's my fear, is that as we get back to the office, we'll actually revert to old ways of doing it, and we find a way to actually be 100% agile.
Oh, I love that. That's actually a fantastic one. Like, you're so right, because if we said, okay, we're going to do these things that we're going to do in that we thought would take 6 months in one day, I think everyone would have just freaked out. But COVID just forced us to do that, like pretty much like go from everyone working to the office to all of a sudden everyone working from home, and then end up being for 8 months. So I think you're right. I think as humans, we're so much more adaptable and resilient than we otherwise realize. I think people just don't want to put themselves out of their comfort zone, unfortunately. So that's a fantastic one. Love that one. If you could have invented anything in the market or anything in the world, what would it have been?
Oh, this is to all my old chocolate friends out there. I tried for probably 20 years to get Mondelez to develop dog chocolate.
Oh, that would be perfect.
Wouldn't it?
That would be perfect.
So I said, my silly analogy was that, it's a market that doesn't grow very fast. So we need another target audience. So I said, well, if you can get dogs to eat chocolate, they eat a lot of stuff. So now chocolate is not good for dogs. So you would have to do something very different to the chocolate. But anyway, I always try to kind of be disruptive in terms of my thinking.
Yeah, I love
just
that.
Just to kind of get something to do.
And we're both dog owners. So yeah, I know my dog, she's sleeping right next to me now. She would love that. I always feel bad when I'm eating chocolate next to her. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Superpower. I was going to say kindness.
That's a beautiful one. Yeah, I love that. There's not enough of that in the world, unfortunately. Great answer. And this is the final question. So if you could give your 20-year-old self one piece of financial advice, what would it be?
Should have gotten married to my wife earlier, because she's the one who does all the personal finance stuff.
That's a fantastic one. I definitely take that on board, because I'm not good with finances either. So my partner does all of the financial stuff. So great answer. And I'm sure your wife will be very happy to hear that as well. Well, thank you so much for today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm so glad we've actually been able to do this face-to-face and not over Zoom. So yeah, thanks again, and really excited to see what you do with ANZ. I have no doubt that you've got some crazy cool ideas coming up in the marketing space. So we'll make sure we put the link to your LinkedIn so people can give you a follow, and the link to the ANZ socials as well. But thanks so much for coming in today, and let's go and get some pasta. Let's go and get some lunch.
Fabulous. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.